Presidential hopefuls Donald Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are seeking support from the Libertarian Party. We'll tell you what both candidates are planning. Israel is being ordered to halt its military offensive in Rafah in a new ruling from the International Court of Justice. We'll tell you how both sides of the war are reacting. Planes, trains, and automobiles are crowded with Memorial Day weekend travelers. We have the numbers of how many people are expected to be on the go. Mayors from across the U.S. are requesting work permits for 2 million illegal immigrants. The details of their request to President Biden and the arguments they bring. A technologist poses as a 13-year-old TikTok user. The differences he discovers between the American and Chinese versions of the app raise alarming questions about U.S. national interest and public health. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. The Libertarian Party is holding its 2024 National Convention in Washington, D.C. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from the Washington Hilton Hotel Ballroom. Luis, what can you tell us about today's convention?
Of course, good afternoon. I'm here at the 2024 Libertarian National Convention. In about half an hour, Robert Kennedy Jr. will be speaking to the delegates tomorrow night, Saturday. Former President Donald Trump will be doing the same. Earlier today, I ran into Congressman Thomas Massie, the Republican from Kentucky, who also identifies with libertarian ideas, and he believes libertarians could decide this year's elections. Let's listen to what Congressman Thomas Massie had to say.
Either party would adopt one of their platform planks, that party could gain an advantage. So, for instance, criminalizing marijuana, I've always said the first party that says we're not going to do that is going to pick up 5%. If you would come out and say you would pardon Julian Assange, right? If you would come out against the wars. But there are opportunities for the Libertarian Party.
I also asked Congressman Thomas Massie, the Republican from Kentucky, whether he thought either party, either main party, Democratic or Republican Party, could do anything before the general elections to shift voter preferences. And this is what he had to say. Let's listen to what Congressman Thomas Massie.
Most of the big bills have passed. I think you're going to see 5 months of political posturing. This is just what happens. Settle in, expect to see lots of messaging bills that are going nowhere. Bills in the Senate and bills in the House.
So as we just saw, Congressman Thomas Massie talking about how government is in full election mode. And I think this Libertarian National Convention is one of the examples of how presidential candidates from other parties, former President Donald Trump from the Republican Party and as independent Robert Kennedy, are vying for the support of independents and libertarians to move that gauge towards the race to 2024 general elections in November. Now, for the next 3 days, libertarians will also listen and debate the ideas of their more than 12 presidential candidates, and before the end of that convention, they will pick their nominee for the 2024 election cycle. Back to you.
Luis Martinez, thank you. The United Nations International Court of Justice ordered Israel today to halt its military assault in Rafah. The decision was met with condemnation from the Israeli and U.S. governments as the war in Gaza continues. NTD's Fiona G. has the latest updates.
Good afternoon, Chris. Yes, as you mentioned, the United Nations International Court of Justice today ordered Israel to stop its military offensive in the city of Rafah. It is ordering Israel to open the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza to allow in humanitarian aid, and they're also ordering it to allow investigators access into the besieged area.
Israel must take effective measures to ensure the unimpeded access to the Gaza Strip of any commission of inquiry, fact-finding mission, or other investigative body mandated by competent organs of the United Nations to investigate allegations of genocide.
Now, out of 15 judges, only 2 opposed the ruling. 1 judge was from Israel and the other from Uganda. The decision is part of South Africa's case against Israel's actions in Gaza. Hamas welcomed the announcement, pledging their cooperation with any UN investigation, but they were also saying that it wasn't enough, and they're calling on the UN Security Council to take practical action against the, quote, Zionist enemy. The Israeli government says they will continue to fight to defend their country. It consistently rejects the case's genocide accusations as baseless. The ICJ has no power to enforce its ruling. And in the latest development out of the hostage situation in the Israel-Hamas war, the Israeli army says today that they have recovered the bodies of 3 more hostages from Gaza.
It is with a heavy heart that I share that last night, Israeli special forces in Gaza rescued the bodies of our hostages, Hanania Vlonka, Michel Nissenbaum, Orion Hernandez. Their bodies were rescued during a special operation based on precise intelligence in the area of Gaza.
All 3 had been killed during Hamas's attacks on October 7th, and their bodies had been taken to Gaza. The overnight operation took place as intense fighting continues in Gaza, and House Speaker Mike Johnson reaffirmed the United States government's support for Israel. He delivered a keynote address yesterday at the Israel Embassy's annual Independence Day reception in Washington, D.C.
Washington has been united, I'm proud to tell you, in a bipartisan manner against this madness, and we will stand together. And tonight I'm happy to announce something else to you, that we will soon be hosting Prime Minister Netanyahu at the Capitol for a joint session of Congress. Yes. This will be a timely and I think a very strong show of support to the Israeli government in their time of greatest need.
Now, it is unclear when Netanyahu will be addressing a joint session of Congress, but Johnson said he will be sending a formal invitation this week. That's all from me for now. Back to you, Chris.
Today, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin addressed graduates of the U.S. Naval Academy. During his speech at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium, he noted how 2 graduates from last year were just aboard the USS Carney in the Red Sea.
They help those in distress at sea. They help degrade the capabilities of the Iranian-backed Houthi militia. And they help shoot down missiles and UAVs. In fact, the Carney conducted 51 engagements in 6 months, which is the most direct Navy engagements with a foe since World War II.
On October 7th, the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer has shot down multiple Houthi rockets fired toward Israel. The Red Sea is a key trade route for global shipping and energy supplies. The newly commissioned officers will serve at least 5 years. Millions of people are traveling by car, plane, and other modes of transportation this Memorial holiday weekend. The unofficial start of summer will see a near record number of people on the move. NTD's Arlene Richards has the story.
Airports, bus terminals, and highways will be crowded this Memorial Day weekend as people make their way to their destinations. According to the Transportation Security Administration, the agency predicts that today will be the busiest day of travel at the nation's airports out of the entire weekend. The TSA expects to screen 3 million people today, breaking the record set during the Thanksgiving holiday last year. Those who aren't flying will be on the road, according to AAA. The Motor Club predicts that more than 43 million people will hit the roads this holiday, with 38 million of them in vehicles. Drivers will find gas prices holding steady. The national average right now for gas is at $3.62 a gallon. That's slightly higher than last year at this time. Weather may be a factor this weekend as forecasters are predicting storms throughout parts of the country, causing delays. With crowded highways and airports, travel experts are telling people to pack their patience. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
4 Americans are facing harsh prison sentences of up to 12 years on charges of illegally carried ammunition during recent trips. But a 5th one was just freed. The Oklahoma governor says the punishment doesn't fit the crime. He also says that U.S. should consider banning Americans from traveling there. In 2023, the U.S. State Department issued an alert highlighting the potential 12-year sentence and to check their luggage for stray ammunition or forgotten weapons. The British territory stiffened its gun laws in 2022. The courts there have sentencing discretion to consider various factors in gun cases. However, the country's Court of Appeal ruled in February people who've been convicted can't get away with just a fine and no prison term. And mayors from 40 different cities are seeking work permits for illegal immigrants. They're asking President Biden to allow over 2 million illegal immigrants to work. The mayors of New York City and Chicago are leading the coalition of 40 cities. They sent a letter to Biden asking him to use Homeland Security to grant parole to the individuals in question. That would apply to long-term illegal immigrants and those who arrived recently. They say the people in need of work authorizations have for decades worked diligently, started businesses, and more, but that those people often had to endure dangerous work conditions and exploitation. The mayors conclude the letter by saying that immigrants add significant value to the U.S. economy as taxpayers, consumers, entrepreneurs, and more. Pro-life advocate Lauren Handy was recently sentenced to almost 5 years in prison for a protest at an abortion clinic. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with the Thomas More Society legal firm who represented Handy.
Thomas More Society senior counsel Martin Cannon says the sentence is excessive.
The DOJ pushed so hard on every single possible way to push that number up that we wound up getting a 5-year sentence under circumstances that the most closely analogous previous cases got about 2 years.
The whole case started with allegations against the Surgery Clinic in Washington, D.C. On its website, it advertises abortions for 27-plus weeks of pregnancy. The Washington Post reported that a doctor at the clinic, Dr. Santangelo, was the subject of an undercover video in 2013 about what the clinic would do if an abortion resulted in a live birth.
Obviously, you're here for a certain procedure, and if your pregnancy were, let's say you went into labor, the membrane's ruptured, and you delivered before we got to the termination part of the procedure here, then we would do things, we would not help it.
Santangelo later said he just wanted to reassure the woman and that he would actually call 911. Members of the pro-life group Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising saw the undercover video and did a sit-in protest at the Surgery Clinic in 2020. AP News reported that protesters linked themselves together with locks and chains and blocked the doors. Handy and others were eventually charged in 2022 and convicted in 2023. Handy was found guilty of conspiracy against rights and violating the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, or the FACE Act. Thomas More attorney Martin Cannon discusses the Surgery Clinic.
There are 2 separate studies by pro-abortion groups that point out that abortions done the way Santangelo does them on these late-term babies are likely to produce live births half the time. 2 studies, 10 years apart, totally replicate that number.
The attorney says the conspiracy charges in the case contributed to the long sentence.
The rational approach to this would be to say, okay, those 2 people violated FACE, but these other 8 people were simple trespassers. They didn't violate FACE. But the conspiracy says that if you all join together and talk about a kind of a common plan, then every one of you is guilty of the worst things that 1 or 2 of you might have done, even if those were never part of the plan.
Cannon feels a scapegoat is being made of Handy.
And interestingly, the only real thing that everybody agreed upon, if you want to say there was a conspiracy, the conspiracy was to be peaceful and passive and nonviolent, and that's what they were.
The attorney says the Thomas More Society is appealing the verdict. According to Cannon, multiple rulings in the case kept their clients from getting a fair trial. He draws particular emphasis to the refusal to let the jury see the Sergey Clinic video that inspired the pro-life activists to take action. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
When we come back, a technologist poses as a 13-year-old TikTok user. The differences he discovers between the American and Chinese versions of the app raise alarming questions about U.S. national interest and public health. And an internal report shows more Boeing workers sharing their concerns about product safety. That story and more after the break.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun. According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9, the highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritang green vegetable omega-3.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call 800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now. 800-494-1562.
Thank you for staying with us. The U.S. Justice Department and TikTok are asking an appellate court to fast-track a ruling on legal challenges to a bill President Joe Biden signed into law last month. NTD's Andrew Thomas speaks with a tech expert to find out more about the dangers the legislation aims to address.
Under the new law, ByteDance has until January 19th to sell TikTok to an American buyer or face a ban. The bill passed amid U.S. national security concerns and alarm over users' mental health. Jeffrey Kane, policy director at the Tech Integrity Project, says the China-based company's algorithm is at the heart of the issue.
TikTok has mastered the craft of the algorithm beyond anything else we've seen. People say that TikTok's algorithm, it's able to reach into your soul. It's able to figure out what you want to see next without even asking you, with very little data going into it. TikTok is extremely addictive, and the algorithm is really the source of this success here. A lot of our youth have become so addicted to TikTok that it's their only source of actual news, that literally they're opening TikTok in the morning and they're getting news bites which might be controlled by the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. So this is the threat.
Kane and his team have been able to use virtual private networks to pose as 13-year-olds on TikTok and Douyin, China's version of the app. What they've found is that the same harmful content available to a teenager in the US isn't accessible to 13-year-olds in China.
Why does TikTok permit certain content in the United States but prohibits that same content in China?
Yes, the Chinese government wants to ensure that at home its own kids are protected. But what happens in America doesn't concern the Chinese government. You know, they don't care what goes on over here. I would suspect that they have some incentive to allow this to happen, to allow TikTok to, spread this misinformation in America, because, for them, it's why not? They want to create chaos among their rivals.
Kane explains how young people increasingly rely on social media to get their information. Because TikTok is so addictive, sometimes it's their only source.
How does the CCP use TikTok to influence American users and, I guess, in turn, American policy?
Congressional offices got phone calls from people literally threatening to shoot them. I mean, there were people who said that they were going to commit suicide, and these were people who were 9 years old, 12-year-old. I mean, there was one congressman who had to notify the authorities because he received a death threat. So this is the power of TikTok. This is what they're able to pull off with this extremely addictive algorithm.
Kane raises the stakes and poses a hypothetical likely to play out in the near future.
Now imagine this in the event of a major conflict with China. Imagine if China invades Taiwan, which they are openly threatening to do. Imagine if China moves in the South China Sea. Everything that China says it's going to do, it probably will do. It has to back up its words. And TikTok, as we've seen, is a political weapon that they can use in the United States as they see fit.
What is your response to TikTok's assurances that users and their data are safe from the CCP?
The fact of the matter is that Chinese employees do have access to the data of Americans. There is a user, this has been reported, there is a user called the master admin who has had access to all the data in the past. Chinese executives have been caught spying on at least one American journalist using the app. This is not something that is, it's not deniable. It's not like a mystery what's been going on. There is hard evidence out there. And when people say there's no evidence that this data is being shared in China, they're simply wrong about that, and we can prove it.
ByteDance and the Justice Department are asking the D.C. Court of Appeals to rule by December 6th. That way they can petition the Supreme Court if necessary before the January 19th deadline. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Fake accounts on social media are cropping up before the November election, and more Boeing employees are voicing their concerns on safety issues. Here's Don Ma with today's Business Matters.
Thank you very much, Chris. So fake accounts posting about the U.S. presidential election are proliferating on the social media platform X, according to a report by social media analysis company. And analysts from this company, it's an Israeli tech company called Sierra, found that 15% of X accounts praising former President Donald Trump and criticizing President Joe Biden are fake. And the firm uses, which is called machine learning, to identify fake accounts. And the report also found that 7% of accounts praising Biden, a Democrat, and criticizing Trump, Republican, are fake. So Sierra's study is based on a review of posts on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, over 2 months beginning March 1st. And the review included analyzing popular hashtags and determining sentiment in terms of whether posts are positive, negative, or neutral. The analysis shows that newly detected fake accounts had increased up to 10-fold during March and April. Now, besides that, Boeing saw a 6-fold increase in submissions from its employees, raising concerns related to the safety of products and services during the first 2 months of 2024. And this is compared with the same period last year, and this is according to the plane maker on Friday. The dramatic rise in these reports occurred after an incident on January 5th involving a mid-air cabin panel blowout on a newly minted Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 jet. And Boeing Boeing said this in its annual safety report. Now, in February, an expert panel reviewing Boeing's safety management processes had found a disconnect between the plane maker's senior management and employees involved in its safety culture. All right, that's all from me today. Chris, back to you.
As the world marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day on June 6th, ceremonies are honoring the sacrifice of those who fought in the historic World War II invasion. Silhouettes of 80 soldiers were etched on sand on a beach in the town of Broadstairs in southern Britain ahead of the anniversary. Pete Gower is a 72-year-old veteran. He remembered his father, who fought with the Sussex Regiment in Normandy, saying it must have been horrific for him.
When he was on the landing craft, and he's telling me that all the blokes were being, sick over each other because the landing craft was bobbing up and down, and everybody was being sick and all sorts. Then bullets started hitting the landing craft, and the landing craft doors went down, and all the bullets started hitting the men, and it must have been horrific for him. What was going through his mind, I will never know. But it was pretty horrific.
For 150,000 Allied soldiers from the United States, Britain, Canada, and other nations invaded France to drive out the forces of Nazi Germany. The operation is considered a turning point in World War II. Thank you so much for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. We wish you a happy Memorial Day weekend.